Check your gas tank. Look at your grocery bill. Now imagine both doubling in a single week. That's not a worst-case fantasy from a doomsday channel. That's exactly what happens if one 21-mile stretch of water closes. And tonight, that water is the most dangerous place on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil passes through it every single day. Airlines depend on it, factories depend on it, the food in your local grocery store depends on it. And right now, Saudi Arabia and Iran are circling each other in a confrontation that could choke it shut and crash the global economy with it. This is not a drill. This is not speculation. This is the most serious moment the Gulf has seen in a generation, and almost nobody outside of defense ministries and oil trading desks is paying attention. You should be. Because what happens there in the next 90 days will hit your wallet before it hits the headlines. Welcome to my channel, where we break down the stories that actually move the world. If you want to understand what's coming before it costs you, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from tonight. We read every single one, and we want to know who's awake. For over 40 years, Saudi Arabia and Iran have been the two heavyweights of the Middle East. Two nations, two visions, one region that cannot hold them both comfortably. Saudi Arabia leads the Sunni Muslim world, Iran leads the Shia. And the space between them has burned for decades. In Yemen, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in every conflict where money and weapons flow from opposite directions into the same battlefield. They've never fought each other directly on their own soil. They've used proxies, they've used money, they've used influence networks that stretch across the Arab world. But the rules of that long Cold War are now changing, and the world is finally paying attention. Here's what shifted. In March 2023, China brokered a surprise diplomatic deal between Riyadh and Tehran. Two enemies who had not spoken officially for 7 years restored relations in a single afternoon. Embassies reopened. Handshakes were photographed in Beijing. Foreign ministers exchanged warm words for the cameras. For a moment, it looked like peace was actually possible. But peace in this region is rarely what it seems on the surface. Underneath the diplomatic smiles, the old tensions kept burning. The proxy wars continued. The weapons kept flowing. The mistrust never truly went away. And now, the cracks in that fragile peace are starting to show in ways that should worry every person who depends on stable energy prices, which is almost every person on Earth. Iran's economy is collapsing under the weight of international sanctions. Its currency, the rial, has lost more than 70% of its value in 5 years. Inflation has crushed ordinary Iranians, making basic groceries unaffordable for millions of families. Bread, meat, medicine, all of it has become a daily struggle for working-class people who have done nothing wrong except being born in the wrong moment of history. Protests have erupted across the country with growing intensity. Women leading the charge after the 2022 death of Mahsa Amini. Workers striking over unpaid wages. Students demanding political change. The Iranian regime has responded with arrests, executions, and crackdowns that have drawn international condemnation. And the leadership in Tehran knows what every cornered government in history has known. When the pressure inside gets too high, you turn the attention outward. That's why Iran has been quietly expanding its naval capabilities in the Gulf. That's why its Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has seized foreign tankers multiple times in recent years, including British and Greek vessels. That's why Iran has been linked to attacks on shipping lanes from the Red Sea to the Persian Gulf, and why Iran-backed Houthi forces in Yemen have launched repeated strikes on commercial shipping. Iran is signaling something with these actions. It is saying, if you squeeze us, we squeeze the world. If you isolate us economically, we isolate you energetically. And here's the part that should make every analyst nervous. A regime under maximum pressure rarely makes calm, rational decisions. History shows that economic desperation pushes governments toward dramatic gestures. The Iranian leadership is in exactly that position right now. While Iran has been weakening, Saudi Arabia has been transforming itself at an extraordinary pace. And this transformation is exactly why the regional balance has become so unstable. Under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Riyadh is not the cautious oil kingdom of 20 years ago. The country has poured massive resources into military modernization. American F-15 fighter jets, advanced missile defense systems including the THAAD platform, modern radar networks, drone fleets, and a new generation of military officers trained in modern warfare doctrine. All of it represents a fundamental shift in how Saudi Arabia sees its role in the region. Saudi Arabia has also moved aggressively to diversify its economy through the Vision 2030 plan. Massive investments in tourism, technology, entertainment, and renewable energy are designed to prepare the kingdom for a future where oil revenue alone cannot sustain its ambitions. But here's the strategic reality. That future requires regional stability. A war in the Gulf would destroy years of investment and reputation building in a single week. So Saudi Arabia is preparing for two scenarios simultaneously: peace, if it can be maintained; war, if it cannot. And that dual preparation itself sends a powerful signal to Tehran. The old assumptions that Saudi Arabia would always wait for American protection, that it would never act decisively on its own, that it could be intimidated by Iranian threats, those assumptions are no longer safe to make. Now stop and think about this for a moment, because this is where geopolitics becomes personal. If the Strait of Hormuz closes tomorrow, even for 30 days, what actually happens in your life? Oil prices could spike past $200 per barrel within days. That is not speculation from a YouTube channel. That is the genuine estimate from major energy analysts, including those at Goldman Sachs and the International Energy Agency, who have modeled this exact disruption scenario repeatedly. Gas prices in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, in every country that depends on imported fuel, all of it explodes upward almost overnight. But the consequences do not stop at the pump. Shipping costs rise because vessels need fuel too. Food prices follow because trucks and ships move groceries to your local store. Manufacturing costs increase because factories need energy to operate. Inflation, which central banks have spent the last 2 years desperately trying to control, comes roaring back with a vengeance that no interest rate hike can stop quickly. Recessions become almost certain in vulnerable economies. Jobs disappear. Savings shrink. And in developing countries that already struggle with energy poverty, ordinary families pay the absolute highest price of all. This is why every major military in the world is watching the Gulf with extraordinary intensity right now. The United States Fifth Fleet is permanently stationed in Bahrain for exactly this reason. The British Royal Navy patrols these waters regularly. The French maintain a strategic base in the United Arab Emirates. China is steadily increasing its naval presence in the Indian Ocean. Russia watches closely from its bases in Syria. Because every serious government understands one fundamental truth: whoever controls the Strait of Hormuz holds a finger on the global economy's pulse, and that finger can squeeze whenever it chooses to. Here's what's genuinely new and genuinely dangerous about the current moment. The drone era has changed warfare in the Gulf permanently, and the defenses have not caught up. Iran has spent the last decade building one of the largest drone arsenals in the world. The Shahed series of suicide drones, cheap, effective, deployable in massive swarms, has been battle-tested across multiple conflicts. The same drones Iran has supplied to Russia for use against Ukraine could, in theory, be launched across the Gulf in minutes. And the world's most advanced warships, including American destroyers worth over $2 billion each, were never originally designed to defend against this kind of warfare. Defending against a single ballistic missile is one challenge. Defending against 100 small, cheap drones arriving simultaneously from multiple directions is a fundamentally different problem that military planners around the world are still trying to solve. Each drone costs Iran roughly $20,000 to manufacture. Each interceptor missile fired to shoot one down can cost $2 million. The math alone reveals the strategic asymmetry. You cannot defend a billion-dollar warship indefinitely against $20,000 drones launched by the thousand. That is the uncomfortable truth that defense ministries from Washington to Tokyo to Berlin are now confronting. The technology of warfare in the Gulf has outpaced the defenses originally built to stop it. Every military analyst studying this region quietly admits this reality, even when official statements remain reassuring for public consumption. It would be a mistake to think of Saudi Arabia and Iran as the only actors in this drama. The conflict between them plays out through a network of proxies that extends across the entire Middle East and beyond. In Yemen, the Houthi movement has received Iranian weapons, training, and political support for years. Houthi forces have repeatedly attacked Saudi territory with missiles and drones, and they have disrupted Red Sea shipping in attacks that have rerouted global commerce. In Lebanon, Hezbollah operates as one of the most heavily armed non-state actors in the world, with an arsenal of over 100,000 rockets aimed at Israel and influence reaching into Lebanese government itself. In Iraq, Iran-aligned militias hold significant political and military power. In Syria, Iranian forces and proxies have entrenched themselves throughout the country. This network gives Iran what military strategists call strategic depth. Even if Iran itself is weakened, its proxies can apply pressure across multiple fronts simultaneously. And every proxy conflict has the potential to escalate into something larger, especially if Iran feels its survival is genuinely threatened. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, has built its own network of alliances and partnerships. The relationship with the United States remains foundational, despite recent tensions. Cooperation with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, and Jordan provides regional support. The historic 2020 Abraham Accords opened the possibility of cooperation with Israel against shared concerns about Iranian ambitions. The regional chessboard is more complex than any single confrontation suggests. So where does this all go from here? 3 realistic scenarios are unfolding in real time, and the world will know which one wins in the months ahead. Scenario 1. Diplomacy holds. China continues pushing both sides back from the edge. The Saudi-Iran deal brokered in 2023 survives its first major stress test. Back-channel communications prevent miscalculations from turning into catastrophes. The strait stays open. Oil continues flowing. The world continues, slightly more nervous than before, but fundamentally intact. This is the outcome every responsible government is privately working toward. Scenario 2. The Cold War intensifies. More proxy conflicts erupt, more tanker seizures occur, more incidents at sea become regular news. A slow, dangerous escalation that never quite tips into open war between Saudi Arabia and Iran themselves, but keeps the global economy permanently anxious. Oil prices climb steadily. Insurance costs for Gulf shipping rise year after year. The world adapts to a new normal of chronic Middle East instability that affects every economic decision made anywhere on Earth. Scenario 3, and this is the scenario no responsible analyst wants to discuss openly, but every responsible analyst privately considers: a single miscalculation. One tanker hit at the wrong moment, one drone strike that destroys something it was not supposed to destroy, one commander making a fateful decision in the heat of a few critical minutes when communication breaks down. That is how regional wars actually begin. Not with grand declarations from podiums, with accidents that no one in power can take back once they happen. History remembers the small moments when minor mistakes triggered enormous consequences. The First World War began with a single assassination that almost nobody at the time thought would matter. The Gulf right now is exactly one of those historical moments, waiting to either pass safely or explode unexpectedly. If you want to track where this situation is heading, watch for specific signals that genuinely matter. Monitor oil price movements. Markets often detect escalation before headlines do. Watch for tanker incidents in the Strait or the Red Sea. Pay attention to official statements from U.S. Central Command, the Iranian Foreign Ministry, and the Saudi Defense Establishment. Track diplomatic visits between Beijing, Riyadh, and Tehran, because Chinese mediation is the most important stabilizing force in the region right now. And watch what Iran's leadership says to its own domestic audience, because the internal political pressures inside Tehran will ultimately drive Iranian foreign policy more than any negotiation in any foreign capital. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a waterway on a map. It is the pressure point of the modern world, and what happens there in the coming weeks and months will directly affect the price of fuel in your car, the cost of food on your family's table, and the stability of the economy you depend on every single day. So here's the question worth genuinely thinking about tonight. If the Strait of Hormuz closes for 30 days, are you and your family actually ready for what comes next? Higher fuel prices, rising costs, economic uncertainty. Would you be prepared, or would it catch you completely off guard? Drop your honest answer in the comments below. Are you confident, concerned, or completely unprepared for that scenario? We genuinely want to hear from you because the conversation in the comments often teaches us more than the headlines do. And if this analysis helped you understand the real stakes of what's happening in the Gulf, share this video with one person who needs to see it before the next development hits the news. Subscribe to BC Alert and turn on notifications, because when the next major shift in the Middle East breaks, you will hear it here first, without the noise, without the spin, without the fake drama. Just the truth that actually matters and the analysis that helps you understand it. Stay informed, stay ready, because in a world this interconnected, this fragile, and this fast-moving, ignorance is no longer a luxury that any thinking person can afford to keep.